立法會主席。
President.
Good
morning, members. We carry on with our scrutiny of the Appropriation Bill 2013 at committee stage. We are on to Part 2 of the amendments. Mr. Albert Chen, I think we should show respect to the chair if we can have a quorum call.
黃國興議員咩問題？
利用呢個
Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, while we're having a quorum call, Chairman, this is the third day of the filibustering. We've wasted $3 million of taxpayers' money. Mr. l.Bill, your question. I think it is out of order for someone to make any speech while we're having quorum call. Mr. l.Bill, Chairman, if members have to offer advice, there are many ways they can do so. Well, he is tendering advice. Mr. Chen, Mr. Wong has raised his hand. I'm listening to him. If he is out of order, then I will be saying so. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Chairman, thank you. Thank you so much for making summarizing the time spent on quorum call yesterday. And I hope that if members are requesting a quorum call and they are not here, I hope that you would handle that properly. Well, in relation to a request for a quorum call, and under the rules of procedure, there is a provision, clear provision regarding how this should be handled. I have to act in accordance with the rules of procedure. I cannot do anything outside the remit of the rules of procedure. Mr. Chen, well, when members are speaking, I hope that you would direct them to have a good look at the rules of procedure. They cannot be so ignorant to raise anything that's got nothing to do with the rules of procedure. This is a waste of time. Mr. Chen, when members take the floor to speak, they cannot be repetitive. Other than that, the rules of procedure doesn't make any provision for stopping members wasting time. Let's resume our debate on Part 2. Does any member wish to speak? Mr. Raymond Chen. Chairman, today we resume our joint debate on Part 2, and that is the Executive Council's expenditure and the honoraria for the Executive Councillors. Number 8, I would like to slash the expenditure for the Executive Council, the annual expenditure, that is. Technically, structurally, and legally, I have advanced my argument regarding the Executive Council, or the desirability of the Executive Council. We have seen more cons than pros with regard to the Executive Council, and there can be more cost-effective ways to achieve comparable effects, like, for instance, under Basic Law 54 to 56, there are doubts. We cannot ensure the unofficial members of the Executive Council who can influence the Chief Executive's policy. And from the point of view of reward politics, I feel that this Executive Council setup is neither fish nor fowl. I will elaborate on this point today, and then I'll be moving on to the composition, the lineup of the existing Executive Council to back up my argument that the annual expenditure should be slashed down to $1,000. The non-official members of the Executive Council have been practicing the accountability system, and they are trying to bypass the Executive Council. Now, the former Executive Councillor, the incumbent President of Council, he said that this ruling coalition only bears shame but not glory. This is what I say. The with the Executive Council, the members don't have any common governing philosophy. Their composition means that there is always a tug of war to absorb the pro-government members into the council would give rise to perception of transfer of benefits. And they will monitor the government in its governance when the committee is held. But they will be utilizing, I'm suggesting that there is likelihood that they will be bargaining with the administration, and they can tell the members of the public that they would be in a better position than other members to influence a government decision. Given this inherent situation, the Democrats, at least in this term, do not have any representation there at the Executive Council, and we're given the perception that we're being destructive instead of being constructive. And the administration will be taken advantage of by this ruling coalition. It will be difficult for the administration to establish any credibility. The Executive Council is the core of the administration. The integrity of the councillors should be whiter than white. I'm not merely talking about this term. I'm talking about the 3 terms. The executive councillors, officials and unofficials, have been exposed to have scandals. And it would be difficult for members of the public to monitor the executive councillors. So it is only right and proper for us to slash the honoraria for the executive councillors. As to the extent of the cut, I have about 70 odd amendments here. Fellow members are welcome to decide whether to support my amendments depending on how convincing I am. So I feel that the Executive Council doesn't have any positive effect on Hong Kong's politics. It is really a hotbed for transfer of benefits. And therefore, I feel obligated to propose these 70-odd amendments to slash the funding. I hope that I have advanced my arguments are sufficiently clear in relation to the flaws of the setup. I mean, there are doubts about the desirability of the Executive Council. And then I now move on to this term of the Executive Council. Now, we would like to slash the funding for the Executive Council, in particular in relation to this term of the Executive Council. I have to say something about the setup, the lineup, and the performance integrity, credibility of certain executive councillors. Now let's take a look at this term, the C.Y. Leung administration and his Executive Council. We feel, the members of the public feel, that in the composition there are so many C.Y. Leung supporters, and they are shining his shoes, as it were. We have Fanny Law, URA Chairman Barry Zheng, One Country, Two System Research Institute, Mr. Zheng Chi-chuen, and also the traditional pro-establishment members, FTU Cheng Yu-tong, Zhang Hok-ming from the Rural Committee, from the business community, Laura Cha, Zhao Zhonggong, Starry Lee, Regina Ip and Jeffrey Lam, W.K. Lam being the convener of the Executive Council once this lineup has been announced. Some people were critical. Now, I think the overriding objective is to absorb people from different quarters, different background. Now, if you look at this lineup for this Executive Council, we don't have members who hold different views. So it is being criticized for being unable to absorb different opinions. Now, the Executive Council can foster a harmony. Now, we had the whole camp, Tang camp, Leung camp, all these different camps Now, when it comes to the composition of the Executive Council, can we achieve a thawing of the previous rows? We cannot see this happening. The Executive Council cannot fulfill its desired effect. There are so many problems, so many implications that arise from this lineup. I'll elaborate this further. C.Y. Leung said that he would expect the executive councillors to work harder and have fewer days off. He also expects the executive councillors to be acting like the head of bureaus and to reach out to the community. And these are the 2 points C.Y. Leung told the members of the public. Now let's have a look at the institution of the Executive Council. It is inherited from the Executive Council in the colonial days. Now what is this all about? Basically, it is the highest advisory panel for the SAR government. It is there to tender advice to the chief executive regarding important policies. We mentioned the Basic Law 54 says that it is there to assist an organ for assisting the chief executive in policy making. Now, the Executive Council is not there to implement any policies at all. To expect the executive councillors to reach out to the public or to do the walkabout together with the chief executive, does it mean that the executive councillors will have to fulfill the role of policy implementation? There are a lot of doubts and nagging doubts in people's mind. Now, we must bear in mind that in the Executive Council we have legislative members sitting there. I am grateful to them. They are collecting honorarium from the Executive Council, but they have to take a pay cut from the Legislative Council for these members wearing 2 hats. And there is also this confidentiality and collective responsibility principles. These are highly controversial. And this is something inherited from the colonial days. In the legislation, there is a clear provision for that. It is reported that there are some incumbent executive councillors who suggested that this confidentiality and collective responsibility principles should be kept under review. Now, of course, these principles serve particular functions, but in the Executive Council, it has been turned into a black hole. It has been turned into mysterious kind of organizations, and any agenda items can be sunk into oblivion at the Executive Council. We know nothing about them at all. Now, since there is these principles of collective responsibility and confidentiality at the Executive Council, then I think that that there may be, when conflict of interests arise, there is this system of avoiding attending the meetings.
And the incidence rate was also very high, as some members have already pointed out at yesterday's council meeting. And the administration doesn't have a very strict system of recording the attendance of EXCO members, and they have not been able to provide such information or statistics to this council or the media. All right, given the fact that we have this confidentiality rule and also collective responsibility system, theoretically speaking, even if they have heard some major decisions being taken at the Executive Council meeting, they should not have informed their friends and family members, and they should not have jumped the gun or by taking advantage of such insider information by doing certain things relating to such EXCO decisions. But then if both are happening together, then the efficiency of the EXCO would be affected. Theoretically speaking, every year we have given them over $21 million a year for their expenses, and emolument for these non-official members, I think is not good value for money. And yesterday, some members also said that EXCO members, the public's perception of EXCO members is again another problem. Well, for members' information, when the public's recognition of EXCO members is so low, should we still be paying them? Should we still continue to support this funding allocation? The University of Hong Kong has been conducting surveys on the popularity rating of EXCO members, but then regrettably, because of the lack of popularity amongst EXCO members, so for the survey results or findings released in the end of January, yes, Franklin Lam has been subject to criticisms round and round, yet he has been one of the top 5 EXCO members that are being known to the public, because for the other EXCO members, their popularity rating is so low. Well, for Laura Chai, yes, her popularity rating was some 49.4%, but then given the low popularity rating, she is still not on the top 5 list. And as a result, Franklin Lam was the 5th on the list. And of course, Regina Ip, one of our colleagues, she managed to get 57.4. So when compared to W.K. Lam, her rating is actually higher, because for W.K. Lam is 56.4 and Fanny Law is 51.6, and then Starry Lee 49.5. It's already not a very high rating. How come, when compared to Franklin Lam, who got 42.3, how come they still did not rank on the top list? Well, Franklin Lam took advantage of the insider information, and he did something, and now he's supposed to be on holiday, and yet is he paid? All right, you can see that this is really a black hole, and even Regina Ip here suggests that she doesn't know whether or not he's paid. So it's not about whether or not he is continuing to receive his pay. So this is really quite a mystery. Mr. Raymond Chan, your time is up. And does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Albert Chan. Chairman, for the 11 amendments that I have moved, it involves cutting the pay of EXCO members by 1 month. And as I said yesterday, one of the members whose pay that I'd like to cut is Franklin Lam, who actually bought flats before the announcement of the special stamp duty. And the other one is Chiang Chi-kong, and yesterday I managed to say much of it, and I'll be supplementing that today. With regard to the way Chiang Chi-kong dealt with issues, in particular, his attitude towards national education, and he's totally oblivious to the sentiments in the community, and he totally ignore parents' concerns, and this is really rather appalling, because at the time when the situation was already causing a lot of public outcry, and his chief secretary for administration actually had to come out to deal with the situation, because the Secretary for Education was not able to deal with the situation. He was actually suffering from this incompetency problem. And so his remarks did not help ease public emotions. Actually, he was adding fuel to oil. He was actually fueling the situation. And he said that without national education, our society will not be able to move forward. That's what he said. Given the fact that there was already a public outcry, and the public was already staging assemblies every evening, yes, of course, that's what he should or he would have done as a political bouncer. playing the role of a political bouncer would actually be fueling the social sentiments in the form of a cultural revolution, and that's not what he should have done. And also, that would only have negative impacts on Hong Kong's governance. Yes, some people doubt that for people like Chi-chuen, who are political bouncers, actually, that's the new strategy of running Hong Kong. For example, recently we also have seen the group of Love Hong Kong, and they're actually resorting to radical actions to confront those in the opposition camp, and even within the Executive Council, they might have thought that they could also resort to such tactics to confront the so-called radicals in Hong Kong. And apparently, there is also a political scheming behind all these, and there is also political calculations behind this. That if that is the case, then really this is a misfortune for Hong Kong, because under one country, two systems, we all expect that the ruling party or the ruling government or the government in power would try to buy in people with reasoning, and it should consult the public. That's the conventional way of governance. So we will resort to reasoning. We will try to take care of the interests of all sectors instead of trying to adopt a very high-handed approach to suppress opposition and also to seize the controlling power. And of course, the controlling powers is in their hands already. And that's why I'm trying to propose to cut the pay of EXCO members, and Chi-chuen is on top of the list. And another issue is about the comment on the flag hoisting ceremony, because in 2012 there was one occasion whereby the national flag was hoisted, but then some of the spectators were actually carried away. They did not take any action during the ceremony, but then apparently the police had a blacklist, and even if you have not done anything, you can also be carried away. And at the time, there was a one-sided or lopsided criticisms by the Pan-Democrats against such actions taken by the police. But then Chi-chuen, as a political bouncer, said that, Mr. Chen, I'd like to remind you that under Rule 41(7) of the Rules of Procedure, when members speak, they are not allowed to make any remarks referring to the actions by Executive Council members when they are actually not discharging their official duties. I'm trying to illustrate or explain why I propose to cut his pay. And the third candidate that would have a pay cut would be Barry Cheung, and this is under 93. So for the three EXCO members, after their pay has been cut, then that would amount to $202,170. Well, for Barry Cheung, he gives people the impression that he's honest. He is an honest man, and he's hardworking. And well, perception-wise, he's not really a bad guy. But then why have I proposed this? But then if you look at his political stance and so on, when compared to other EXCO members, he does have some strengths, but then he's wearing too many hats as public officers. Well, if you look at the appointments that he have been given in public bodies, there are simply too many. And as an individual, I simply do not think that he would not be able to focus on each and every job. And he doesn't have so much time and energy and effort and if you have to wear so many hats, it's not possible for any individual to do a good job in any one of them. And probably that's because of political rewards that Lai-wan would like to offer him. And he would also like to have somebody who's close to him to take care of many of the important policy areas. So let me count the number of posts that he has been given. And after listening to that, you understand that it's not possible for any individual to have taken on so many jobs. Well, he's one of the disciplines, standing commission on discipline services. So he's the chairman. And also for the Patron Survey Commission, he's a standing chairman. And also Strategic Development Commission, he's a member. And then for the Civil Service Pay and Conditions of Service Commission, he's a member. And then for the Honors and Rewards Commission, he's a member. And also the Long-Term Housing Strategy Committee, he's a member. So for each and every one of these commissions or committees, actually the terms of reference is very important, and also the scope of work and the number of people involved, and also the interest, the public interest involved would be very significant. Many of them have to do with strategic developments, and they also have far-reaching implications on the future of Hong Kong. And therefore, if you take part in these committees or commissions' work, and if you just attend the meetings without really making a lot of contribution, and you may not be able to attend all of the meetings at all, because well, sometimes the attendance rate might be low. And if that is the case, then that may result in the ultimate decisions taken by these committees and commissions not entirely in line with public interest, and it could be detrimental to public interest. So by taking part in too many committees and commissions' work, so he might just be attending these meetings. Well, there are not enough members here, so please have a head count. Mr. Albert Chen.
Chairman, I was talking about Barry Chung. He has membership on many committees, meaning he has a lot of public duties. And last year, apart from that, he set up a new company, which is a very unique company, Chairman. Together with Tang Yi-bong, he set up a company. As long as I understand, to a certain extent, it is a consultant company. And basically, we could see that its main stake is to start opinion wars on behalf of C.Y. Leung by gathering Leung fans to defend the governance of C.Y. Leung. In February, the CPP-CC member Liu Meng-hong lashed out on C.Y. Leung, and this foundation helped to remove that crisis. As an EXCO member, you set up a company with a political mission. In terms of your identity as EXCO member, in terms of benefits and roles, would there be a conflict? I dare not say anything about financial benefits because I don't have the information. That this Hong Kong United Foundation, I do not know whether it is transferring benefits to Barry Chung, but looking at its mode of operation, I think it is unacceptable. As an EXCO member, you do have a role in defending the CE in terms of public opinion, in terms of strategies. You do have a special role to play, and you should contribute to C.Y. Leung's governance. So when you set up this company, it is really a little strange. I'm therefore saying that his remuneration should be reduced. This is because he has too many public duties and also because of special role in this Hong Kong United Foundation. I find that hard to accept, and that is why I am placing him at the third place in the reduction of salaries. The fourth one is Chang Yu-tong. There are many FTU members among us here. And this is my Amendment 92. For EXCO members, each one will have 1 month's salary reduced, totaling $269,560. This is not a big sum. It has a nominal effect. Chang Yu-tong, among EXCO members, should have the longest experience. He has served 3 terms of government, starting with Siege-tung, Greedy Zhang, and then 689. Starting from the 1st of July 2002, he has been an EXCO member, and totally he has earned quite a handsome sum, and that would total $7.49 million. Just that amount would afford him a good enough flat to live in, and he must have been remunerated also in his other public positions. Apart from C.Y. Leung, I think Chang Yu-tong is remarkably the most experienced EXCO member. He is a labor representative. I think it's good for a labor representative to be on EXCO. In fact, I want more of the same. But is he in a position to represent the labor sector? And has he fought for the benefits of the labor sector at EXCO? Let us look at the governance of the Hong Kong SARG over the past decade or so. Let us take a look at the livelihood of our workers. I think they are suffering more and more. In other words, he is incompetent in influencing the policies of government, or he has not strived for the benefits of the workers on EXCO. In fact, over the past decade or so, we have seldom seen him speak on behalf of the labor sector. We did not even see him appear on behalf of the dockers who are on strike. And recently, what is ironic is that it was found that some high-ranking official in FTU who are supposed to be labor representatives are actually office bearers in a contractor. So what has Mr. Chang Yu-tong done in the past decade? Sorry, Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, what's the problem? A point of order, Chairman. What is the point of order? Is it that members can speak without regard to facts? Why do you say so? Because, sorry, Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, Mr. Albert Chan cannot cite any facts. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, please sit down. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, you are not attending the debate of this council for the first time. In the rules of procedures, there is no stipulation saying that members must base their speeches on facts. Here, we are having a debate. If any member is of the view that another member's speech cannot be agreed to, or you would like to challenge the member's speech on the point of facts, you can raise your hand and debate him. So, members, please do not abuse the so-called stipulation of point of order. You must understand the rules of procedures. Yes, thank you for pointing that out, Chairman. I was just trying to say that members cannot just stand up and say whatever they want. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, what you just said is totally meaningless. I'd like to remind members again, if you'd like to debate with other members, and if you also want to refute what other members have done, then you should follow the procedure of this debate. You should not state it as a point of order. Mr. Albert Chan, thank you, Chairman, for correcting the very ignorant members' speeches. Please just continue. I would welcome members who would be speaking to correct or challenge what I am saying. If he should say that I'm not basing my remarks on facts, then he must have not read newspapers. Mr. Albert Chan, I think you are digressing. Sorry, Chairman, that is because somebody challenged what I said. Mr. Chairman, the performance of Chang Yu-tong, I will continue in a moment. Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Yes, Chairman. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, good morning. Sorry, I was looking for the microphone. Thank you for having this table lamp specially installed for me. Because my eyes are not serving me well. Well, let me come back to my amendments. Well, actually, you don't have to be so worked up, members. I am continuing to receive messages who defend you on my phone. Mr. Lau was saying that you have been engaged in filibustering. Would you have any tummy problems now? And in fact, I was in the washroom when I read that message. I like to say to members here, if you think we have not said the right thing, please stand up and debate us. You are speaking for the third time already on this issue. Please do not digress. I'm just speaking from my heart. Yesterday, Mr. Raymond Wong did an analysis. He said that the EXCO has been marginalized and virtualized. It has to do with the system for the operation of the EXCO. He cited an example. He said that at meetings, members should declare interest and withdraw or recuse themselves if there is a conflict of interest. Recusing oneself, of course, is something good, because if you have a conflict of interest, you should not be there to participate in the discussion, you should not be voting, and also this should be minuted. Now, of course, all that has to be decided by the chairman. But Mr. Raymond Wong left out one point of analysis. He said that if you do not attend the meeting, it is not something good, but he has not mentioned the other related points. In fact, by reducing the salary, it does not put an end to the matter. I would suppose, for example, Chairman, that there are 3 areas where conflict of interest might occur: financial services, property, development, and shipping. Some members are deeply involved in these areas, and according to the Basic Law, Article 55, members of the Executive Council are to be appointed by the Chief Executive from among the principal officials of the executive authorities, members of the Legislative Council, and public figures. We can see a lot of public figures having been appointed under the excuse that they represent the different strata in society. Let us not look into what strata they represent. Well, from what I can see, they do not represent the grassroots. Never mind. I was talking about the three areas: financial services, property development, and shipping. These three areas of Hong Kong's economic activities are represented. And if financial services are discussed, then members from that sector should withdraw. And of course, the financial services are closely related with logistics. There is one who is now on leave indefinitely. But even if he has been on leave, then other members who represent another sector can speak on his behalf because they are so closely related. And this is what we mean by cronyism. It is all right for one of them to be there and speak up. Okay, I won't go into that. Mr. Krugman talked a lot about cronyism in Asia. You can search his name on New York Times, and you will see all the typical analyses. Much of that is akin to our political system. He cited Indonesia, South Korea. Now, I'm not going into the details here. But when the highest decision-making advisory committee assists the head of government, of course, that is the CE. He is above everybody in Hong Kong. And if that is what these members are doing, what can we do? So to a certain extent, in the colonial era, the composition of EXCO was more reasonable because it only included colonial officials. The sovereign state was so far away, and of course that goes to show that the governance was not legitimate because it's so far away. But it was still better than what is stipulated in Article 55 here, which is so unclear with its specifics. Mr. Leung Kwok-hing, you have already said so yesterday. No, I'm not repeating myself. Well, in fact, what you have been saying basically has been covered yesterday. No, you can listen to the tape. I was talking about capitalist cronyism. Please do not repeat. I'm not repeating anything. Mr. Raymond Wong's analysis is not correct in my view. I might not necessarily agree with his viewpoint. He said that we were lazy, but no. Even if you tend to be lazy, you have to have good grounds for it. I can give you an example. Between January to February 2012, during Donald Tsang's era, 161 items were discussed, and 49 items were the subject of withdrawal or recusing of members, and all incidents of recusing amounted to 222. Many members recused themselves from EXCO discussions, and of course, in his last half year, many people had to recuse themselves, but then he was not able to stop something from happening. Mr. Leung Kwok-hing, you are speaking for the third time, and if you continue to repeat yourself, and if you go into unrelated charters or waters, I will have to stop you according to ROP 45(1). Yes, I know you have the authority, Chairman. You can even throw me out of the chamber, but I am following up on another member's analysis. That analysis has not been dealt with. I was telling members and others who can Google and for this analysis on the internet. So I'm not repeating. I'm citing information to prove my point. But you are saying I should not carry on. I was going from one point of argument and trying to supplement it with examples. I'm not repeating. So please come back, Mr. Leung Kwok-hing, to the issue under discussion. This goes to show the collapse of a system. In other words, near the end of his term, a CE was discussing issues whereby the withdrawal of members was necessitated on many occasions. Now, what did it show? It shows the collapse of the system because members of EXCO had to recuse themselves one after another. But of course, if they banded together, then they could supplement each other's absence and still speak on each other. The system itself is most corrupt. Even if you are a person of integrity, it doesn't help. I will cite one last example. It is actually advantageous to C.Y. Leung. From July to December 2012, there were 23 EXCO meetings discussing 108 items, and there were a total of only 30 withdrawals from EXCO discussions, a much smaller figure than in the Zhang era. That went to show that there were items under discussion which were important for society, which were related to people's livelihood, so there was not so much conflict of interest. I'm just targeting this system here. I'm a very reasonable person. I'm a fair person. From this we can see C.Y. Leung and Donald Tsang are two persons. They appointed different people to the EXCO, and we see that brought about different results. And maybe that was due to the items being discussed. And I could only guess, and I could only say that about the 108 items discussed during the C.Y. Leung's EXCO era, not so many sensitive items were discussed. If you say the EXCO members are highly remunerated, it is not a totally meaningful statement. But you can say that they have not done their best. I am arguing my point, and that is to reduce the expenditure to EXCO to $1,000. Maybe you are mistaken. I'm not talking about taking away 1 month's salary of all EXCO members. I am saying that it should be reduced to $1,000, and that would amount to the demise of EXCO. I was saying that there was arbitrariness. And by that I mean when a new CE comes on, he might rely a lot on the principal officials in EXCO. After we have had the POAS, after Donald Tsang assumed office, he felt that the civil servants could help him because they were from their own system where he came from. Donald Tsang carried on with the POAS started by C.H. Tung. We could only see the total remuneration for EXCO members. They would not tell you how much each one got. There was not a system for formulating the remunerations. I was saying yesterday that you should first off have the constitution and then you entrench it in local laws. This is not a simple thing to do. When we have the basic law, when we have this mini constitution, when it gives you the authority, then you have to find a way to tell people what rules and regulations are to be followed. And this goes to serve as check and balance against the powers of the government. Article 55 affords a big loophole. I have not even gone to Article 56. On this issue, rather than saying who is more lazy, then I would rather go for a systemic change.
Well, if Mr. C.Y. Leung is appropriately proactive, he should put in place a system. The Article 55, 56 cannot be changed. There should be a system where the members should declare their interests, and there is no provision regarding the composition of the Executive Council. Now, this body wields enormous power. I feel that if Mr. Leung were to listen to what I have to say, even if he has he's having diarrhea, it doesn't matter. Now, for those who do not attend the meetings too many times, should they carry on? We cannot have access to the materials. We put questions to them. We ask them about A. They give us a reply about B, and there is no way we can get to the bottom of the truth. Nobody can monitor the body. Is it a bad system? Even LegCo members cannot monitor the Executive Council. How can you expect the members of the public to monitor the Executive Council? Now, Articles 54 to 56, we cannot revitalize it, to use a modern term. It doesn't make sense. We are leaving them with too much power, and with these power vested with them, they're not doing anything to keep the body in check. Mr. Chairman, you were part of the Executive Council before. You must be aware of what I have to say. Now, at the Citizens Radio, we have launched a judicial review. If the TA were to issue the license, then under Article 56, the Chief Executive doesn't have to call the Executive Council meeting. Now, whether Mr. Ricky Wong will be given a license is down to Mr. C.Y. Leung himself. Now, he can tell the TA that, look, I'm not granting this. He doesn't have to give any justification that this is a corrupt system. Article 56 doesn't make clear provision. So, Chairman, many people criticized me for not being helpful to Hong Kong. That this is a very important constitutional setup. Chairman, your good self has been part of the Executive Council for so long. Because of confidentiality, you cannot say anything at all. I'm not bound by confidentiality. I am here to speak up on this corrupt system. What's wrong with that? You're not supposed to say anything. No, you've been part of the system. You cannot say anything. Now, we are being constructive, Mr. Chairman. We're knowledgeable. We are criticizing this system. The only thing I'd like to repeat is Article 17.3. We do enjoy the power to maintain the respect, the dignity of the Council, to make sure that there are enough members to attend the meeting. We must have a quorum. I hope that those who defend the dignity of the Council should remain here and do not stay away.
請議員返回座位。
Please be seated, members.
有冇委員要發言？
Does any member wish to speak? Mr. Raymond Wong. Mr. Raymond Wong. Did you call me? Yes, Mr. Raymond Wong. Good morning, Chairman. Morning, members. Today, there are 102 amendments in Part 2. Two are attributed to me. I'd like to say something about the whole system and the relevant people. Yesterday, towards the end of my speech, I mentioned the honorarium. 2013-14, the total expenditure compared with 12 to 13, a rise of 8.5%, far higher than the expected increase for the Chief Executive's Office of 0.6%. Now, what would these entail? After some research, we find that this is the C.Y. Leung era. These are the unofficial executive councillors under the C.Y. Leung era. There are 16 of them. An increase of by 3 compared with the previous term, and that explains the pay, the honorarium. And the honorarium for the non-official executive councillors are adjusted automatically. They're tied to the CPI index, 5%. The rise is 8.5%. Deducting the 5%, we're talking about 3.5%. If you talk about this automatic CPI-linked formula, there is an extra 3.5% on what this is all about. They said that this has to do with the Provident Fund for the civil servants. Now, there are some civil servants in the Executive Council, so my amendment is in relation to the entire year's estimate. And that is the members' honoraria and other expenses. Now, they talk about this Provident Fund for the civil servants. Now, where does the problem lie in relation to the honoraria? The non-official chief executive council members, is there a limit? Official members, the top 3 secretaries and the policy directors, the 15 of them, C.Y. Leung attempted to expand the accountability setup, and with a new, he would like to impose a new style, and he would like to revamp the government secretariat by increasing the bureaus. Now, I mean, with me getting in the way, he couldn't get it through. Now, with this revamp of the government secretariat, there will be 19 official members. So I tried to stop that for the sake of C.Y. Leung and stop the number increasing to 19. There is no cap on the number. With this institution, there is no ceiling on the number of members here. And the pay is automatically adjusted, tied to the CPI, and they can give extra pay. Now, LegCo members, last time we had to count on Ms. Emily Lau's committee, and after a lot of trials and tribulations, we managed to get a little bit of increase, and we were spit at almost for this pay rise. Now, we cannot seek to increase our pay, and there is a committee sit in judgment of the paper. This is not the case for the Executive Council. Well, you mentioned that yesterday. Yes, Chairman, I know that. I am talking about the number of members in the EXCO. Chairman, you also understand that there is very little dignity in this council. Please do not repeat what you said. I'm repeating what you said. I'm not repeating what I said. We have the dignity to be sitting here for the meeting. Simple as that. Let me carry on. Well, some people feel that by filibustering we are wasting time or wasting our life. In fact, through this process, we are debating the Executive Council, which is constitutionally a power organ in Hong Kong. This has everything to do with the well-being, the welfare of the whole of Hong Kong. Now, this government secretariat and the Executive Council, they are deciding on the fate of 7 billion people in Hong Kong. They're deciding on the well-being of the 7 billion people in Hong Kong without any monitoring. The LegCo is representing public opinions. Don't we have the obligation to keep this EXCO, which doesn't have the mandate, which is all-powerful, deciding on the fate of 7 billion people of Hong Kong, on the toes? Shouldn't we have the obligation to keep it on the toes? Now, these 102 amendments are terribly serious, Chairman. If I may turn now to the membership. Some are sitting here in our midst. I mentioned them yesterday. I'm not going to criticize our fellow councillors here on this occasion. Let's have a look at the official members, the ex-officio members. And they were elected by a small circle without any mandate. Sau-lan was elected by a small circle without any mandate, and he was appointed by the central authorities. And constitutionally, he is this Executive Council is appointed by this person, Sau-lan, and this has this enjoys the greatest power in Hong Kong. Let's not talk about the three top secretaries here. Raymond Tam, Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs. He used to be Director of CE's office or Undersecretary for CMAB. Constitutionally, does he have any say? What's the point of him sitting on the EXCO? Every Tuesday he's sitting there. What's the point? In the area of constitutional development, he doesn't have any contribution, zero contribution. What's the point of him sitting there at the Executive Council? Someone's raising his hand, Chairman. Rules of Procedure 41.1, Chairman. We're talking about honoraria of the Executive. What's that? Honoraria. Your point, please. Chairman, under ROP 41.1, members are only supposed to confine their speech to the subjects under discussion. Now, we are debating the honoraria of the Executive Councillors. Mr. Wong is instead talking about something else, not directly relevant to the honoraria. Madam Cheung, I understand that the debate has been dragging on for quite a bit of time. I still hope that members who are here would be a little bit more patient and listen to what members have to say. There are 100 or so amendments, and you've got a pointer that have to do with the slashing the funding for the Executive Council, including the honoraria for the Executive Councillors. I understand that Mr. Wong is trying to elucidate why the Executive Council has not fulfilled its function, and therefore the cut. And other members feel that the honoraria should be slashed. So I do not think that Mr. Wong is saying something irrelevant to the subject. Mr. Wong, please. Chairman, thank you. Well, we're talking about the system here. I hope that Madam Ann Chung would have a look at the amendments that I move. I'm not really talking about them individually, although I do have the right to talk about them individually because we are trying to seek pay cut for certain members. We have a dozen or so. I can dwell on them, but here I am talking about the amendments that I move. I'm advancing my arguments here. I do hope that Madam Ann Chung would appreciate that. I mentioned the official members a moment ago. Ms. Ann Chung raised the relevancy issue, and I feel that I'd just like to highlight a few of them. I'm not talking about the three top secretaries. Raymond Tam, he is Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. He is the official member of the Executive Council. Every single Tuesday, every week, he has to sit on the Executive Council. Now, this is paid for by taxpayers' money to the tune of $300,000 per month. He is one of the top officials, not to mention the perks that he's collecting. If you take this $300,000 and divide it by the number of hours, is he wasting taxpayers' money? We do have the obligation to monitor the situation. Now, I move the amendment today in order to slash or remove the funding for the Executive Council for the annual, for the whole year.
So there is a necessity for me to say this in particular. This guy's here, and every week when we talk about constitutional reforms, what kind of contributions has he been making? And also, why do we have to have official members in the EXCO? That's because we have to ensure the consistency of government policies. And for non-official members, they are like senior advisors to the administration. They do not have the powers to execute policies. And theoretically speaking, they could not take the initiative to initiate policies. And therefore, they were there to discuss issues, and then the implementation will be left to the officials from the bureau, and then theoretically speaking, it's the subordinate civil servants of that bureau minister that will be implementing or executing the policy decisions of the EXCO. So what we are trying to do as elected members, we are not saying that the decision-making process is problematic in itself, but then for people who have taken part in the decision-making process, whether or not they enjoy high popularity rating or whether or not they have the mandate is the problem. So we of course hope that the entire government will have the public's mandate, so that in terms of the input of government, in terms of the input of public's views in the government, there would be proper channels. The current problem is that there is no way that public views can be channeled into the government. That has to do with the entire political system. It's not what we're discussing today. We are here only focusing on the mode of operation at this stage. The Executive Council is not doing its job. Yesterday, I was looking at it from the ideological perspective, so it's been weakened and it's really not discharging its duties properly. It's like a virtual organization. Even if it's under the existing constitutional setup and legal setup, it's still not able to do its job. It's still not able to discharge the duties empowered to the body by law. It's not able to do its job, and therefore you will have to slash it. So it's like another amendment about the slashing of the CPU, because it's not doing its job at all. That's why we have to cut it. All right, for some non-official members sitting on EXCO, the purpose of them being there is not that great because of the time constraint. Another example that I like to cite is Matthew Cheung. He's an official member, and he's also here. Well, whenever we talk about him, I'm really angered. All right, as the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, sitting on EXCO, he would have the duty to convey the views of the public to EXCO. and what the public is concerned about. Well, with regard to the principal officials' performance in EXCO, well, you will have to understand that they are actually official members, and therefore it has nothing to do with the subject under discussion today. All right, I was just citing those as a handful of examples because it's also paid by public money, and he's also here. He's also sitting on EXCO, and every Tuesday they have a meeting. Unless, well, you say that they have not been paid by EXCO because they are already paid as officials, but then they are also getting our pay. They are actually getting paid by the taxpayers. They are getting the pay from the public purse as senior or top officials of the government. But then we're talking about budget and also traveling expenses and also honorarium for members. And all right, that would also be counted as the expenses of the EXCO. How can that not be relevant? How can that be not relevant? All right, we do not see that the rise is reasonable, the rise in the pay. All right, we do have a table here which is very clear. I don't want to waste time to read that out to you item by item. It's from 98, 99, since the reunification. I can discuss the details here with you, but then obviously we have more members and their pay has also risen, and this is really outrageous. That's one of the reasons why I think that if you do not cut their budget, then we are not really doing justice or serving our constituents or voters. And when I speak again, it's going to be my 4th round, and I think there is a need for us to review the entire system. Only then will we be accountable to the public. And also this legislature must fully play its role in monitoring the executive, because we have the legislative power, and therefore the legislature should play checks and balance against the executive. And what does that entail? I hope that members will consider this more carefully, because after all, this is our duty. Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Raymond Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Before I start my new round, I'd like to supplement on several points, and I'd also like to respond to some remarks by members that they are not sure about some of what I said. And I'd also like to express my disagreement to some remarks made by other members. And yesterday I cited the example of Franklin Lam. I'm not targeting him as an individual. I'm looking at the pay system in our public allocation system, because according to press reports, he is now suspended from work. He's now well, but then is he receiving his monthly pay? Well, nobody dares to be categorical about this. Well, some suggested that no, he is not paid, and the remuneration is being saved or deposited into a particular area. So will there be refund to this council so that there will be an account to the Finance Committee, or is it that we'll wait till after his incident or his file is closed and then we'll see if he should get a payback? But then the thing is, we have to look at the principle. All right, it is this Finance Committee that is responsible for allocating funds to the Executive Council. When we do not have power to monitor, to change, or to influence, or even be informed of the details, if that is the case, then I don't think we should just close our eyes and act like signing a check and then allow them to get whatever they want. So this is just an example, and we will have to reflect on it, because indeed we have not been able to see anything about this black hole. All right, for the Executive Council, it's like a black hole, but that is a matter of principle. It's not about the amount of funding. I think this is a very important principle. If members have anything to raise, we should discuss it, because you'll be missing your chance of speaking if you do not make a point here. And some members also quoted my motion, that's item 8, is about cutting the allocation or provision to $1,000. As I said, the basic law provides that we have to have the Executive Council, but then I'm of the view that there are demerits more than merits. So the demerits outweigh the merits. So how can we deal with that situation? And after cutting or slashing the allocation, how can it continue to play its role? I think that's the spirit behind my amendment. Number one, the basic law does not, the basic law is silent on the number of EXCO members. It just says that, for principal officials, LegCo members, and also community leaders. All right, so 3 categories of people. So they can be, so for LegCo members, even if you do not pay them, some members will still be willing to continue to serve. And then for public figures, you can reduce the number to the lowest number because there is no money at all, because the budget has been lashed to only $1,000, and there is no provision under the basic law that you will have to pay them, and therefore the $1,000 can just be given to them as Lai-C, and then for the $1,000 it can be spent on the operation of the secretariat and everything. So even after the budget slash, it will still be able to discharge its duties and play its role. That's point number 3. And then I'd also like to look at the point made by Albert Chan, a member from the People's Power. But then looking at his amendment, I do not subscribe to that, and I do have a lot of query about his amendment, because his amendment is simply too mild. If you look at Mr. Albert Chan's amendment, that's item 85. And all the way to 95. Altogether, there are 11 of them. And when you look into the details, he's trying to cut the pay for 1 to 11 EXCO members by 1 month. So he's going to cut 1 month's pay from 1 to 11 EXCO members, and he said that this was meant to be a symbolic cut, but then he also leveled a criticism, and I would not be prepared to support this symbolic pay cut proposed by him, because there are other more draconian measures to deal with that. So the reason why Mr. Albert Chan is only proposing to cut 1 month's pay from these members, is it because these people might be good friends of him, and therefore he would be prepared to be lenient on them? And also, how come he's only cutting the pay of 11 members? I hope that Mr. Albert Chan would also respond to that later, because for non-official members of EXCO, there are altogether 16. How come he's cutting the pay for 11 and not the other 5? So according to his logic, he said that for lawmakers who are also EXCO members, he will not be cutting their pay. In other words, Jeffrey Lam, Starry Lee, Ms. Regina Ip, they will not get any pay cut. But then who are the other 2? And then probably my reasoning is that he's not going to cut the pay for women councillors. So it so happens that there are also women councillors, and apparently Albert Chan is more lenient on women councillors. So it's for Albert Chan to clarify this later. All right, after elucidating on these points, I'd like to go on with what I left yesterday. All right, as lawmakers, we can only cut their expenses, and given their low popularity rating, and given the low level of recognition by the public, and I'd like to state that for Franklin Lam, after what happened, he was still one of the top 5 councillors that the public know best. That's because of the low popularity rating of all EXCO members. According to the survey findings of the Hong Kong U at the end of January, some 614 respondents were interviewed, and for the one enjoying the highest popularity rating, that's of course Regina Ip, some 80 respondents were able to tell her name. And then we have also noticed that from the 7th to the 16th place, if you look at those members, actually the popularity rating is so low, it's less than 20%. Some actually got 0.1% of recognition. In other words, Barry Chung only 12, and then Anna Wu just 7, and then Chang Chi-kong just 7, and then Chang Hok-ming, Jeffrey Lam, and Chao Chung-kong. And then for Jeffrey Lam, it's okay because he joined late. It's just 1. But then, as you can also see, for non-official members of EXCO, in terms of the public's acknowledgement, all right, for Regina Ip 80, and then Lam Woon Kwong 64, and then Franklin Lam 40, and then Sarah Lee 32, and then Fanny Law 24, and then Laura Cha 22. So the popularity rating is really very low. So this is almost one of the lowest so far that we have seen so far. And if you ask any member of this council, asking them to name all the 16 names of the EXCO members, I'm sure that will be very difficult. Now, turning to my amendments, 97. Okay, this is rather strange because it's almost identical to the amendment moved by Mr. Leung Kwok-hing under 96. So to resolve to cut the provision, and it's almost roughly the same as the whole year expenses for the convener of EXCO. So just a change in the number, but then the amount is very similar. Well, 12 million or 12 sorry, it should be $1.294 million. So it's just for one person. So the convener for non-official members of EXCO, so it's about the whole year's emolument. So I'll be elaborating that from 2 levels. The first level has nothing to do with the individual per se. It's just about the post itself. And second, I'll be looking at the incumbent convener of EXCO, W.K. Lam. Now, turning to the post itself, I'm not targeting the individual. I'm just looking at the establishment, the post itself. I've talked to many people. I've also looked at many papers and so on. But then I haven't been able to locate anything that has to do with the convener of EXCO in terms of his functions, his roles, and also in terms of the effectiveness of his job. So what's the difference with or without this post? But then if you look at the financial provision for this post, Mr. Leung Kwok-hing has also helped at the special FC meeting. He also raised this, and he asked, all right, under the CE office, out of amongst the EXCO members, how much are they paid individually, and also for the convener of EXCO's non-official members, what's his pay? And according to the reply, well, for non-official members, they're actually getting $67,390 a month. So I suspect that if he's also a lawmaker, then 1/3 will have to be deducted. Theoretically speaking, if we have more lawmakers sitting on EXCO, then the expenses will be less. So they'll get their pay deducted. So 1/3 of their LegCo's pay will be deducted. All right, for convener of the EXCO, he'll get $107,910 a month. So there is a discrepancy between the pay of the convener and an ordinary member of EXCO. All right, taking this council as an example, if you look at the president's pay and the pay for members, of course there is a difference, and of course we understand that you do have more onerous jobs. For example, yesterday, well, at around 10, I saw you go. At around 12, I saw that you went out to attend to Nature's Call, but then afterwards, I rarely saw you go out again. And then if there should be 10 filibustering debates every year, then I'm sure we would all agree to pay you a lot more. But then, if you look at the structure of the Executive Council, I do not see why this convener of non-official members of EXCO should be paid somewhat more handsomely than his fellow councillors. And I do not see any difference in his role as EXCO members. But then I've also consulted some veteran politicians, and they told me that the difference is that, for example, for EXCO members hosting a banquet and so on, and then for the convener, he's supposed to be there on every occasion, but then for the other members, they can choose to be there or not there. It's okay. So that's the only reason, or that's the only point that I got from them. All right. In other words, he's able to participate in every banquet. So would you regard that as a duty or regard that as a benefit? And he's entitled to a higher pay. And of course, I do not agree. So I'm not targeting the individuals. I'm just querying why he should get a more handsome pay. So that's about item 90. And I'm trying to cut the pay for the convener of EXCO. And I hope that the administration will review the functions and duties of this convener to determine whether or not there needs or that it warrants a difference in pay. Next, I'll look at the incumbent convener, Mr. W.K. Lam.
Yesterday, Mr. Lam Kwok-hing said a lot, but I would still hope that the president or chairman would still allow me enough time to dwell on this point. We are not having a game here when we propose this amendment. This is a serious matter, and I'm talking about taking away the entire remuneration package. Of course, I'm targeting the position, but also there would be an impact on the person himself, and I would need enough time to lay out the logic behind my amendment. In fact, Mr. Lam Wun-kwang was one of the most respected persons in the political arena, in my view, and what he did in his previous positions, well, I supported part of his work and not the other part. But why is it that I'm still proposing this very serious amendment? I hope I will have more time to detail this point. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Albert Chan. Chairman, it would be best for Mr. Wong Kwok-hing to be here because I'm going to talk about Chen Yu-tong. Can you summon him to come back with 17.3?
陳偉業議員請繼續發言。
Mr. Albert Chan, please carry on. Thank you, Chairman. I'm disappointed Mr. Wong Kwok-hing is not here because he challenged me just now on my criticism against the FTU. Mr. Chairman, if you look at the composition of the EXCO, if you look at the status of the people instead of looking at the performance, there is only one Labour representative, meaning Chang Yu-tong. EXCO councillors, of course, are close to the rich and famous, and maybe if you are in that position, you are no longer alert to the evils of that sector, just like Timothy Tong. He has taken to Mao Tai because he was so close to mainland officials. If you look at issues that were discussed at the EXCO, especially those related to the public interest, it was so seldom for us to hear Chang Yu-tong speaking up for the Labour sector. Whether he spoke up for them at EXCO, we would never know. We would not know what members said at EXCO. We would not even know their attendance record. Before the EXCO moved to the new CE's office building, when it had meetings at the old CGO, the members attending a meeting would have been caught on camera by the media because there would be protesters greeting them. But the new EXCO moved to the new CE's office to have meetings, and maybe they were ferried in right to the entrance by their own cars, and then there were so many different ways to access the building. The media could now hardly catch them on camera, and there is no way for us to tell whether anyone attended meetings. It's really like a very concealed kind of operation, and the information about EXCO is hardly or can hardly be gleaned by the public. In the past, we were more often able to tell who attended meetings, but now the information is quite evasive. So if you look at the performance and also the actual work done by EXCO members, I can say that Chang Yu-tong, who was supposed to represent the Labour sector, well, might have received the appreciation of the consortia, and that is why the FTU is having support from more consortia, and in terms of fundraising, and also the conglomerates would like to get FTU members to take up positions in their business organizations. Well, I hope the FTU will not change its nature. FTU is the biggest labor union in Hong Kong, and Chang Yu-tong has been appointed, I believe, on EXCO for 3 terms for a total of 11 years, mainly because of his position in the biggest labor union in Hong Kong. He is not held to be accountable. He doesn't need to be elected. This is just a political status conferred on him. Maybe they have other political identities. Many people suspect that the FTU leaders are CCP members, including your good self, Mr. Chairman. This is a kind of political appointment. Well, so as it may, if your performance can meet the aspirations of the public, and if you can really exemplify the status as an EXCO member, and if you have really helped the Labour sector, nobody would complain even if you have had a total remuneration of over $7 million in the past 11 years. Nobody would envy you. The most important thing is not for you to betray the Labour sector. You did once during the provisional legislature era. The collective bargaining power was handed over to the conglomerates. We had that power, but it was removed. Please come back to the issue under discussion. Yes, Chairman, I was just going a little bit into the background. I'm asking that Chang Yu-tong's remuneration be reduced by 1 month, and he ranks the 4th in my list of amendments. The one who comes 5th would be a familiar figure, Fanny Law. Mr. Raymond Chan was asking me whether I would be slashing the remuneration of lady councillors. I'm not sexually discriminating against anyone. I would only look at their performance and also their stance. I do have a few criteria to apply to the councillors in order to accord priority to these councillors who would have their remuneration cut according to my amendment. And I'm talking about amendment number 91, Fanny Law. I'm saying 5 members should have 1 month remuneration reduced, and that would total $336,950. Talking about Fanny Law, she has been in public service for many years. She knows the operation of the administration thoroughly, because she has held different positions in government, and she has performed well in some of those positions. At the end of her public career, she was made to be responsible for education, but then she was rather high-handed and she disregarded the views of the education sector. That was a blemish in her public career, and that brought about a lot of arguments within the education sector, and the problems actually deteriorated in her hands. But then that was not the reason why I'm asking for her remuneration to be slashed. The fact that I'm proposing this is because she doesn't have integrity as a political figure. She has lost credibility in the eyes of the public. Many people have the view that she can be an EXCO councillor because she was the director of the campaign office of Lai-wan. Many members, especially those who are on the election committee, had many contacts with her, whether over the phone or over meals. I believe Fanny Law was quite active in doing liaison with election committee members. That was her choice if she had wanted to help Lai-wan with his campaign. But then if because of that she has got this position as EXCO councillor as a political reward, I think that is grossly improper. Talking about logic, would that amount to bribery or even corruption? Well, that is analysis to be done on another level. But if she has helped somebody and if she is rewarded in the end, especially in terms of a public service position, remunerated with public money, then I would think it is hugely improper. Fanny Law helped Lai-wan, and she publicly said at that time that if Lai-wan would become the CE, she would not take up any public position. Now, I don't know whether that could be compared to the word game played by the ICAC that the bird nest soup would not amount to a gift. Maybe to Fanny Law, an EXCO councillor position is not a kind of public service, but in the protocol list of Hong Kong, the first one who comes first must be CE, and then Mr. President of the Legislative Council should be one of the top 3, and council members of the EXCO supersede LegCo members, as well as officials.
Well, you said to the public that if this candidate gets elected, I will not be holding down any public office. No sooner had the election was over than in the list of the executive councillors, there she is on the list. And as far as I'm concerned, executive council membership is very much a public office. I think this smacks of deception. It is a very important position, and she's lost faith among the members of the public. The way she deals with matters in her capacity as government officials during the Tong era, like policies were implemented. I think Mr. Wong Yuk-man kept saying that many a time the bottom would be commanding the brain, and it is difficult to negate what she did, but the way she dealt with the matters and that senior positions, she should not have been so domineering and rode roughshod over people. I remember vividly when she was in charge of the education portfolio as an electrical member, I tried to discuss with her about the education for the ethnic minorities in Tinshui-Wai, in Tin Yuen Long, Dongchong for that matter. There were so many Nepalese and Pakistani or Indian ethnic minorities that need assistance in relation to secondary education. And she gave us a short shrift, and because she believed in this melting pot idea, and this is an American idea, she is of the view that all these ethnic minorities should be put in the melting pot in Hong Kong. She ignored all these ethnic minorities. I asked her whether she would have reference to the Canadian multiracial kind of attitude, and she said no. And she's so domineering, and this is given the core values in Hong Kong, I don't think she is qualified to become an executive councillor. Well, as an EXCO member, you should have a mind of your own, but you should also be receptive to views from different strata, from different colors, people of different colors, because when formulating policies, you have to have regard to all manner of views, regardless of their interests, the background, their ethnic background, and so on. So all these have to be taken into account when policy formulation is done, and because the policies would have implications on people of different ethnic background. She doesn't have the decency, she doesn't have the fair-mindedness to embrace people from different backgrounds. Now, when you talk to her, there is very little room that she would be receptive to your views. This is my personal opinion. This is my personal view. Of course, I don't have working relationship with all the EXCO members, but I feel really disappointed with Ms. Fanny Law, and I don't have any faith in her as a result. So she's fifth on the list for EXCO members who should have the pay docked. I don't put her number 1. Number 6 is the two member gang who destroyed Hong Kong's education, and that is Arthur Lee. In my amendment, there's number 90 of the 6 members who should have 1 month paid docked. This is $400,000. Mr. Arthur Lee, of all the EXCO members, is one of the most invisible ones. If you ask the people of Hong Kong or even the media whether they know Arthur Lee is an EXCO member, I don't think you would get any answer since C.Y. Leung took office. When dealing with public affairs and public policies, or when the government is facing important decisions, there is a very clear characteristic with regard to the EXCO, and that is that there are so many scandals besetting the council. The member who has the most number of scandals would be most well known or most notorious. I put Arthur Lee so high on the list because he didn't have any performance to show for us. I'm not sure whether he's interested in becoming EXCO member, because I've heard nothing from him regarding any of the policies. Now, maybe he has too many interests there. Now, I'm looking at the interest declaration form. There may be other members who have more interest to declare. I will supplement in a moment. Ms. Sit-ho. Chairman, thank you. I rise to speak in support of Mr. Raymond Chan's amendment number 84. And number 84 is about subhead 000, head 21, slashing $808,680, and that's equivalent to the estimated expenditure for 1 year of pay for the non-official member, or a non-official member of the EXCO. Now, I don't quite understand some of the figures there. Now, with the Executive Council, it is the highest power organ in Hong Kong. Its performance is less than desirable. In particular, the process of appointment, we were shut out of the process of appointment. We don't really subscribe to the idea of some of the members being appointed as members. Of course, there are some who are held in high esteem, like Ms. Anna Wu is one of them. Now, if we dock their pay for 6 months or 1 month without naming names, I would find it very difficult to support. Now, number 84 is about 1 year's pay, and that I must name him, and that's Frankie Lam. Mr. Leung Kwok-hing. Under 17.3, I'd like members to come back to listen to the notorious record of Frankie Lam.
何秀蘭議員，請你繼續發言。
Ms. Sitho, please carry on. Chairman, thank you. Thank you so much for members who have come back. Mr. Frankie Lam was appointed as EXCO member by C.Y. Leung. As members said a moment ago, EXCO is the highest policy making organ in Hong Kong. Policies formulated have to be discussed by the EXCO even before they came to Let's Go, even before the public become aware of them. So the EXCO members would have prior knowledge of the policies. The information means, well, the prior knowledge would mean a great deal. If you become aware of certain things a couple of hours ahead of time, then you would be able to sell or buy in the equity market. So the integrity of an EXCO member would be terribly important. Earlier, we had Anthony Leung, former financial secretary, who had the Lexus Gate incident, had to step down. And we have to guard against any conflict of interest for the EXCO members. Even the family members should not be privy to the details, because otherwise they would blame everything on their wives. It is BMW, blame my wife. And this is very much a common practice these days. We have to review this. Not just do we have to monitor the members themselves, the family members should not escape the monitoring. Now, we don't know how capable Mr. Lam is. Now, capability is something very subjective. The minutes of the meetings are not made open to the public, so we've got no idea how capable, how much they contribute in terms of their abilities. But Frankie Lam is very plain for everybody. He jumped the gun, or I shouldn't say jumped the gun. I should say before the new tax was introduced, he sold his property. In Hong Kong, members of the public are contributing so much of their pay to property. Now, Mr. Frankie Lam got rich from buying and selling properties, and he sold the property before the stamp duty was introduced. And subsequently, it was questioned whether he has done any wrongdoing. Now, he said that he contributed or donated the money to Centre-line, but this was denied by Centre-line. So this is very much a suspense. There is still mysterious circumstances. I think the best course of action is for the chief executive to appoint a committee, an inquiry to look into this. But the chief executive really did harbor him. He allowed him to take leave of absence, not so much sick leave, but take leave of absence. And the whole matter has been filed away. Now, this is a member of a public body. He's not off sick. He's been off leave for so long, and this is not proper. For electoral members, if we're absent from the council meeting for 3 months, we can be disqualified. 4 months for district councillors. If they are away from the district council meetings for 4 months, and they will lose their seat. I'd like to hear from the secretary. Now, with regard to Frankie Lam, what is the latest state of play? Is he still on leave of absence? Is still getting paid? If he's on leave, what are the reasons why he is on leave? Why is it that the chief executive will allow him to have such extended leave instead of asking him to leave altogether and reappoint someone in his place? Now, there is such a big question mark hanging over us, and this is not right. This is not proper. In the previous session, Mr. Chairman, the officials never bothered to give any reply. If they feel that they cannot stomach all these amendments and they don't bother replying, that's for public to judge. But with regard to Frankie Lam, the members of the public are very concerned about it. Whoever is here from the official side, they should take the floor to respond to our concerns. What capacity is there for Mr. Lam to be there at EXCO? What status does he have? Why remove him altogether? Now, if he is on leave while still getting paid, then I will support Mr. Raymond Chen's amendment number 84, and that is to remove the funding for one non-official member for 1 whole year. And I must name him, that's Frankie Lam. Thank you. Mr. Lam Kwok-hing.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'll be referring to W.K. Lam, the incumbent convener of EXCO's non-official members. Raymond Chen lamented that he had been a supporter of W.K. Lam for a long time, and in proposing to cut his pay, he hoped that the chairman would give him time to explain why. Because he had long been a supporter of W.K. Lam. I think one of the problems of W.K. Lam is I'm referring to his acceptance of the appointment by the chief executive as the convener of EXCO while he was still the chairman of the EOC. I already set out my reasoning, and I'm not going to repeat that here. Under Article 54 to 56 of the Basic Law, there's no mention of the duties of the EXCO convener, whether or not he can really convene a meeting or whatever. In fact, as convener of EXCO is a very important post. In fact, there are some requirements saying that if the convener says that there should be no meeting, then even if you were the chief executive or his boss, you cannot dictate that a meeting be held. And if the item proposed by the chief executive is something that the convener thinks that there is no merit in it, and he can still reject the suggestion by the chief executive for calling a meeting. And I think there's also a very famous case in the mainland, and Deng Xiaoping convened a meeting to dismiss Liu Xiaoqi, and he was criticized for being negligent on its duty, and subsequently he was also fired. But then for this convener of EXCO, he doesn't have this checks and balance ability. In other words, he really cannot check the performance of the official members of EXCO. So I don't know what's the practice of the British colonial era, because the chief secretary might have been able to do that, and now we have no idea whatsoever, and therefore the notion that he should get a higher pay, what's that for? All right, if public money is giving more to a particular individual because he's doing his job, or he has more duties than the others, or he is very much an essential part of that structure, then of course is understandable, because the additional pay is meant to be a reward for that individual doing extra duties. But then in this case, W.K. Lam is congenital, is inherently problematic. So whether it's Lam Wun Kwong or Chen Wun Kwong, whoever is in his post will not be able to do much given the current setup. So constitutionally speaking, what he can do is limited. Well, for the incumbent, Mr. Lam Wun Kwong, of course, he's highly visible to the public. They all know him. There is a problem. He serving as the convener of EXCO, there has been a lot of discussion in the community on universal retirement protection package. Yet what has he done on this? So I do have some objective facts to share with you. It's not that I'm just leveling these criticisms against him without any grounds. I'm sure for W.K. Lam, if he is not wearing two hats, then when he speaks to the press, then I cannot but expect that he's speaking in the capacity of the EXCO convener. So what has he told the press then? Well, he was at the same table with me. We were attending a forum on social security or social insurance, on social security, and he said that within the administration, he said that back in 1993, he was responsible for introducing the old age pension scheme. Given his experience in public service within the administration, there was a lot of obstacles to this, and some actually criticized him for trying to introduce socialism into Hong Kong. All right, he was aware of that. And if he were to relaunch the old age pension scheme in Hong Kong, all right, even if you try to compare that with our proposal for universal retirement protection, or all right, even if just $10 billion will be enough for setting up that fund. So that was what he did back then. And then after becoming the EXCO convener, what has he done? He's supposed to be a very special and unique person. But then what has he done? Since assuming office as the EXCO convener, all of a sudden he said that, well, yes, that should be done. And then at another time, he would say that it's difficult to foster a consensus. Chairman, on this particular issue, how can I pay him? If he's not a convener, if he's just somebody on the street, a man on the street, then it's okay that he changes stance from time to time. But then as EXCO convener, he should have stronger views. And when he's consulted by the chief executive, he would also be given more weight, as the CE would be listening to him. But then at one time he said that, yes, that can be implemented right away. And then at another time he said that there's no consensus yet. So I think his performance, when compared to Nelson Chow that I quoted earlier, would be even worse. Because Nelson Chow said that I have this package that is the best. Well, we will give everybody $4,000. It's different from any other package that has been proposed. But then I believe that 2017, within the Poverty Commission, there is no consensus whatsoever. But then he's very clear. He said that he had an idea. He had a package in mind. But then for Lam Boon Kwong, apparently he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have any proposal in his mind. He's not sure what he's saying. And he's not able to stick to his own view. Chairman, I have to admit that he's bound by the confidentiality rule of the EXCO. But then we are not asking him to tell us what transpired at EXCO meetings. We are just asking him for his personal view. And still, he has difficulty setting his views out. On this issue, I can see that when he was the chairman of the EOC, he was very eloquent. He was very capable of setting out his views, and I really have all the admiration for him, because I thought that, all right, it's very rare to have somebody acting as chairman of the EOC, and he was willing to come forward and set out his views. And I remember on one occasion I saw that there was something on the slogan, and they got the characters wrong. As I've already said on many occasions, please do not be too lengthy about any individual's acts and so on. All right, having wrong characters or typography is not a mistake. It's not a problem at all. All right, I'm just saying. All I'm trying to say is that if this guy is not wearing the head of an exco of the exco convener, then he really have a straight back. By that we mean that well, our ancestors used to well, crawl on the ground, but then he's somebody who's willing to engage in straight talk. But then as soon as he became the exco convener, so he's no longer wearing the head of another organization, he becomes rather hesitant about setting things out clearly. As exco's convener, as the closest advisor to the chief executive, these are just my assumptions. Or else, why do we have to have this convener post in the first place? And if he doesn't have the role of other top advisory bodies convener's role, then what is he doing? So all of a sudden, W.K. Lam changed his stance. He said that this is a really complicated matter, and we will have to start the discussions afresh. Why? That's because I think that within the EXCO, under 54, 55, 57 of the Basic Law, there is no way to clearly delineate the conduct of an EXCO member. Are you allowed to express your personal views in private? We've been talking about confidentiality. Okay, if an EXCO member, in particular a very important member like him, is he able to speak out honestly so that he can become an opinion leader in a community? If he is able to do that, so other than the constraint under the confidentiality rule, if he's able to do what I just said, that is in the top decision-making process, if he's able to play his role as someone who can give sound advice to the chief executive and his colleagues, then of course he will have done his job properly. All right, the EOC chairman is a job, and then executive council convener is another job. But then when he used to be the chairman of the EOC chairman, he was doing a remarkable job. But then as soon as he became the executive council convener, he's no longer doing his job. So I think by appointing somebody to this top job, actually, you're actually almost eliminating his influence. By cutting his pay, I'm not targeting Lam Won Kwong as an individual per se, but then I think we are like strangers these days. When I run into him, I dare not point out his grammatical mistakes in Chinese. The reason why I labor in such detail about his performance, that's because I think that if he's aware of the current hierarchy and system, that he will not be able to fully play his role in his post, then he would have thought twice. That's why, in order not to repeat this in the future, I'll be cutting this from the establishment altogether, and I'll be citing him as an example. All right, I think to be just and fair to him, or if it's because I admire him, that's why I am more critical of him. All right, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. So if you think you are not you're not fit for the job, then you should not take up the post. And as soon as you put on this hat, you will of course have to be prepared to be criticized by me by applying this yardstick. So please remember, please do not stick your neck out and take up an official post, because if you do a good job, then you'll be commended, and if you're not doing a good job, then you'll be criticized round and round. Mr. Lam, I'm not targeting you today. I hope that you will think twice about what I said. I hope that you do a good job so that I will not be cutting your pay. Chairman, I've already finished, but I'd like to. I'll sit down first, and I'll ask other members to. I'll allow other members to speak. Who would like to speak? Mr. Raymond Wong. Chairman, we are still on the 102 amendments, and we are continuing to express our views. First of all, I'd like to declare my stance. I fully agree with what has been said other than myself. Of course, I have to support the amendments moved by myself, and then out of the 102 amendments under Group 2 or Lot 2 of the amendments, I support all of them. Given the fact that I support all of them, actually we'll have to cut the pay of every single one of them on the list. And if you look at the way it's elaborated here, actually, 16 will have 11 months pay cut, and then 15 will have 1 month's pay cut, and so on and so forth. That's why we have a total of 102 amendments. And if you look at the content of the amendments, I'll be supporting all of them. In other words, every single non-official member of EXCO should not get any remuneration at all. Indeed, they should not have become EXCO members in the first place. Within the at the FC meeting, I asked this question. It's about an EXCO member from, he's doing this almost on a daily basis. He's expressing his views to the public, and he has very clear political stance. And then as far as his political views are concerned, of course, is diametrically counter to mine. All right, you might call me, you might brand me a radical, a Democrat. All right, my views are very radical. But then, on the other hand, as far as this individual is concerned, he's also he also has very radical views. All right, if you're a columnist, it's okay. But then, as the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government's executive council member, and if you make those views day in, day out, is a problem. That's why I asked an oral question. I also took the opportunity of the special FC meetings. I also asked this question, and the reply was most unsatisfactory. Well, my question was very simple. Concerning these EXCO members and the views that they express, and also their conduct, what kind of support will be provided by the administration, and if they make certain remarks bringing disrepute to the government's image, then will there be punishments or checks and balance or anything to constrain their conduct? No, nothing. What's the problem? Mr. Leung, well, I'd like to invoke Rule 17.3 to have a head count for quorum.
黃毓民議員。
Mr. Raymond Wong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just now, I said that their remuneration should be slashed. If the Audit Commission can do a value for money study, our amendments should have been carried. Mr. Chairman, you said that we should not pinpoint a particular person and we should not spend too much time on the performance of a particular person. I'd like to talk about the entire EXCO, including the role of the convener. Before the C.Y. Leung administration, the convener of the EXCO was C.Y. Leung. C.Y. Leung had this special feature about him when he was the EXCO convener. I like to try to draw a comparison between C.Y. Leung and the present convener. When C.Y. Leung was the EXCO convener, there was this special feature about him, especially in the recent 2-3 years. He was getting into writing articles in newspapers and expressing his views, and he actually compiled them into a book. I asked a question on improper comments by EXCO councillors and whether there was any check and balance against that. I wouldn't say that it was a really low-ranking officer that answered the question, but she was the permanent secretary of the CE's office, Ms. Liu Yan, and maybe that is correct because she holds that position in the establishment, and she was answering the question on behalf of the CE. I also asked the oral question on EXCO, but then it was the CS4A who answered me. I'm really baffled as to who should take these questions. Mr. Liu Yan was a civil servant at a certain rank, and because of her rank, we would not expect her to be able to tell us a lot. She only cited confidentiality and also collective responsibility, and that this person would enjoy the same kind of freedom of speech as any other citizen in Hong Kong. Well, I'm not saying that EXCO councillors should not have freedom of speech. Talking about freedom of speech, it's just like privacy. There are basic rights which are regarded as those that should be enjoyed by everybody. But then, if you are a public figure, you might have these rights curtailed. But sometimes they have more freedom of speech, just like what I am doing here in this chamber. I am the only one who can have freedom of speech here because I have this platform. There is this machinery for me to express my views. Because of my status, I am exercising my freedom of speech, but other people who also have the same status are refraining from speaking. You are legislators. We are scrutinizing the appropriation bill. You have all the right to speak your mind, and you don't even have to be held responsible for what you say here. But you give up your right, so Mr. Raymond Wong is monopolizing the entire platform. And by that logic, I have more freedom of speech than many other people, but it's because you have abandoned your own freedom of speech or your right to exercise it. But as a public officer, as a public figure, is it that you can freely speak of your mind without any restraint? And then you say, I only represent myself, I don't represent the Executive Council. When you say an EXCO councillor has this freedom of speech and he or she can regard me as a lackey, a minion, or a crazy dog, well, yes, he can have that kind of freedom of speech. But as a public figure, someone who holds public power, when this person speaks, he really has to be very prudent and cautious. So, Mr. Chairman, you might not like the performance or behavior of certain people. You would not show it. Of course, you would not comment on it because you hold that position. You must be extremely fair. But sometimes I do question your decisions, but at least you give us the impression that you are chairing the meeting here in a fair manner. You should also have your freedom of speech. Maybe you don't like certain behavior of some members. Mr. Raymond Wong, you are speaking for the 5th time. Please come back to the issue. Yes, I understand I have to be brief, but I'm talking about the expressing of comments by EXCO councillors, whether when they do so they represent their own selves or the EXCO. Coming back to C.Y. Leung, I should be speaking on C.Y. Leung, but then I digressed a little. C.Y. Leung is the CE. He appoints the non-official members of EXCO, including Lam Woon Kwong, the convener, whose remuneration we are seeking to reduce or deduct. He is appointed by C.Y. Leung. Why is this person not performing on par? We would want to go back to what he said on previous occasions. Between 2011-2012, I'm talking about C.Y. Leung. I said that in the recent 2-3 years, he was so much into expressing his views. And in Ming Pao, in fact, he enjoyed a very big half page. And he would write as his signature, C.Y. Leung, EXCO convener. He did not only sign as C.Y. Leung. In his articles, he actually said C.Y. Leung, EXCO convener. So he must not be regarded as only expressing his own views on newspaper. And he actually compiled these articles into a book. I still remember Miss Eva Chang, an ex-director of Bureau. I think she will remember this as well as I do. At that time, C.Y. Leung wrote an article on housing. As you know, this is his pet subject. He wrote an article on housing. Now, of course, he has made a mess with the housing issue in Hong Kong, but let us go back to that article he wrote. He criticized a director of Bureau, and who is Miss Eva Chang. He criticized Eva Chang. He said Eva Chang was encouraging people. Well, actually, it was not the government's policy to encourage home ownership. And if that was the case, then the property market suffered. He said that this was what Ms. Eva Chang said, the ex-director of the Bureau of Transport and Housing. That was the way C.Y. Leung criticized the administration. He said that the administration lived on Mars for the past 40 years, not in Hong Kong. This was a criticism lashed out at Eva Chang. He was criticizing part of the same team. He was saying it in his capacity as EXCO councillor or convener. And a week later, Eva Chang wrote an article to rebut him. She said the administration has responsibility to facilitate home ownership. But if the administration has to do something to promote it, then there must be cogent reasons and consensus. But now the global economy is volatile, etc., etc. Mr. Raymond Wong, why are you quoting this? How is that related to the issue under discussion? This is because C.Y. Leung, the then EXCO convener, was going into the expression of comments which went against the Donald Tsang administration, which appointed him, and that was a very bad precedent. So that existing or incumbent EXCO councillors followed suit, just like Lam Woon Kwong. He openly expressed views which went against the 689 administration, meaning C.Y. Leung's administration. Now, how can we trust this team? How can we allow the EXCO headed by Lam Woon Kwong and let them decide the fate of Hong Kong people? And how can we allow the C.Y. Leung's administration do anything about the fate of Hong Kong people? The kind of boss would dictate the kind of staff he has. But of course, we cannot say C.Y. Leung is the boss of Lam Woon Kwong. But this is what C.Y. Leung loves to do, especially right before his election campaign. As if the wrongdoings of the previous administration had nothing to do with him. This is very dangerous, Mr. Chairman. I'm extremely worried that Lam Wun Kwong, who was an administrative officer, he was a seasoned administrative officer. When I knew him, he was an administrative officer. I had been on radio programs for many times with him, including the legalizing of soccer betting, etc. And he was this administrative officer, and in the end he became bureau director, and he measured up to the jobs. But then how come the seasoned AO would have his performance so much criticized as soon as he became convener of EXCO? And as Mr. Leung Kwok-hing said a lot about this, and this was quite obvious. At that time, he was also the EOC chairman. And when he was questioned by the public, he could not hold his stance. He did not know whether to speak from which position he was holding. He was an experienced AO. He was a politically appointed bureau director. Why is it that suddenly when he became EXCO councillor, he performed so much worse? This is because of his boss. It is because 689 was at the bottom of the pack. If Lam Wun Kwong would perform better than C.Y. Leung, then he would have a very tragic ending because he would outperform his boss. I wouldn't like him to do that, so I want him to go away.
Not
Miss Claudia Mo.
of this filibustering exercise. I'm standing up to speak my mind, to fulfill my duty, my responsibility as a legislator. I was more than saddened to hear earlier the statements from Mr. Ray Chen Chi-chuen over what he said were his encounters with Miss Fanny Law. Miss Fanny Law, who was our former education chief and now an existing councillor. Allegedly, Fanny Law told Mr. Chen that as far as ethnic minorities' education issues are concerned, the Hong Kong government policy is one of the so-called melting pot policy. We're copying the Americans' melting pot. But it's not just meaningless, it's senseless. The American culture is very dominating. We all knew that. As a matter of fact, in this globalization era, some people would actually call it Americanization. Globalization is just Americanization. You try to copy the Americans, but what exactly have you done to help people to get into this melting pot, to be melted? As a matter of fact, there was a forum not too long ago on ethnic minorities education in Hong Kong, how they failed to learn Chinese properly. Sir, you have no heart to teach Hong Kong ethnic minority kids to learn Chinese properly. On that occasion, there was actually an education bureau representative showing slides, PowerPoints, saying, oh, Confucius College. What on earth are you talking about? In Hong Kong, where we use proper traditional Chinese characters, where we speak Cantonese, not Mandarin. How are you going to help them? Now, sir, I know you're going to tell me that you're getting off topic. But I am not sure if Ms. Fanny Law is still advising the chief executive on the same issue. If things go on like this, this is not going to be tolerable. We cannot allow things to go on just like this. if that's the sort of advice our chief executive is getting. Equal opportunities? Where are equal opportunities? In America, people of all nationalities can easily stand for elections. President Obama is half black. Look at our political system here. Do we have one real ethnic minority here? Do they have a chance to move up? Even now, I'm not too sure what this Executive Council is doing, how it is actually serving the Hong Kong society. When I was a journalist, I used to call this Hong Kong Executive Council the governors and later the chief executive's cabinet. Cabinet, advising him on various major policies. But now we have this minister system. All his policy bureau chiefs are supposed to form his cabinet. So what exactly is this Executive Council doing? Why should it be paid so much of our public funds? I do not know. And earlier, Ms. Sid Ho, our peer, our colleague, mentioned Mr. Franklin Lam Fan Keung. I would like to know, as a legislator, and I think this entire council should have the right to know, what exactly this so-called executive councillor has been doing. And why and how has he been paid still his full salary? Exactly on what reasons, what grounds he was allowed to take leave indefinitely like this? What sort of administration is this? I was told that Mr. Franklin Keung, Lam Fan Keung, I beg your pardon, actually said something like, I was told he was there to advise the chief executive on housing policy. And I quote from press reports, on July the 14th last year, this Mr. Lam, Franklin Lam, actually told the press, low housing prices are not the government's housing policy goal, not the government's housing policy objective. So what is our housing policy goal, our housing policy objective then? And this person, of course there's no goals, no objectives, because this Mr. Lam was there to advise the chief executive, but he's no longer around, although he still keeps being paid. We have to question the logistics and the logic of this entire setup. Why should Hong Kong taxpayers' money be spent on people of the kind? And this Executive Council surely does not deserve such huge expenditure sums from our public coffers. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Raymond Chen. Thank you, Chairman. Today we're debating the joint debate of Part 2 with 102 amendments. I have got 5 or 6 EXCO members on whom I'll be speaking, but I don't think I may have the next chance to speak today. But on Monday, I'm going to attend a court hearing. There will be a judgment handed down. If I get, if I be on bail, I can come back. Unless I get thrown into jail. But this part will not wait. I'm not sure how many parts will be skipped without me. So Chairman, if I may be given an opportunity to elucidate further on the convener of the Executive Council, and that is Amendment number 97, to slash the financial provision for one non-official executive councillor for 1 whole year. I was criticizing the position of the convener of the Executive Council and also Mr. W.K. Lam. The other is the level of appointment by the Chief Executive. Here we may take away the funding for a year, but we cannot stop anybody being appointed to be executive councillor to take up the appointment. The only thing we can do is to move amendment to bring pressure to bear on the appointee in the hope that when appointment is made in future, there would be extra caution to be exercised. LegCo cannot influence the appointment process of the executive councillors, but in the appropriation bill, we can vote against the funding, or we can move amendments for the funding to be slashed. At the risk of being verbose, I would like to say once again that under Basic Law 55, the Executive Council composes the officials and members from the community and public figures. Under the Basic Law, the Chief Executive should avoid appointing those who are paid for by public funds. They may not be councillors, they may not be officials, but they are not community figures. Now, those with public offices, what capacity are they accepting the EXCO appointment? There is a big question mark over there. Other than Mr. W.K. Lam, among the EXCO members, we have Mr. Barry Cheung, who is the chairman of the board of the URA, and he is collecting pay funded by taxpayers' money. In relation to appointment, Mr. W.K. Lam is no longer the chairman of the Equal Opportunities Commission, but I'd like to talk about the system. In this particular case, the chief executive, Mr. C.Y. Leung, appointed someone from the EOC into the Executive Council, and this is setting a weird precedent. I hope that through this amendment to the appropriation bill today, we hope that in the days to come he will not commit the same blunder. Because according to the Paris Convention of the UN, for the key members of these human rights organizations, in fact, the EOC is one of the human rights organizations defined by the Paris Convention. Now, for human rights organizations to be dependent of the government, political parties, or any other organizations that might influence its operation, the independence of a human rights organization would be find it very difficult to function. True independence means keeping a distance from the administration. It should be given power to fulfill its function, to make sure that the independence will not be directly or indirectly impinged upon. And during investigation, there should not be any hindrances. And this is the cornerstone of the success of a human rights organization. This is the principle of the Paris Convention, as alluded to by Mr. Leung Kwok-hing. Whether this amendment is going to get through in the days to come when it comes to appointment of executive councillors in particular convener of the Executive Council, this nominal post, I think they have to hold fast to the Paris Convention. Moving on now to Mr. W.K. Lam's appointment. Mr. W.K. Lam, when he accepted the appointment, was also the chairman of the EOC, and that caused quite a massive furore in the community. First of all, I have to make sure that when I have to recognize the contribution of Mr. Lam as chairman of EOC, now we have the 4 discrimination ordinances, the DDO, the family status discrimination orders, and so on. All these, Mr. Lam has been very proactive, and he has taken up the cudgel for the minorities. I'm sure his position has been very clear. He urges the administration to go down the legislative path. It is a matter of the government officials, whether they are prepared to take the first step. Now, he has become the convener of the Executive Council, and he still insists on this position regarding the right of people with different sexual orientation. People cast doubt on Mr. W.K. Lam as to whether he would be in a position, after joining the Executive Council as convener, whether he will be able to keep his position. Now, Mr. Lam, I don't think he has retracted from his position. And this very position is, as a matter of fact, at odds with the C.Y. Leung's administration's position. In EXCO, there are in fact other members who are in support of consultation on legislating for people with different sexual orientation, and that include Mrs. Regina Ip. Now, when there is a clear conflict of interest between the position of as chairman of the EOC and the convener, then he would resign from his post as convener of the EXCO. He's also said that being EXCO convener, he would be able to stop draconian laws from being enacted. Eventually, he decided to carry on becoming convener of the EXCO. Today, he's no longer the chairman of the EOC, but the point I'd like to drive at is not whether he's chairman of the EOC, but rather when an EXCO member, in particular the convener of EXCO, when it comes to key policy matters, when it comes to matters on which he holds a different position to C.Y. Leung and his team, and he has made his position very clear in the public domain. And if I were, I hasten to add, if I were W.K. Lam, I would not have served on as a convener of the Executive Council. So that's why we propose that the honorarium for the convener of the Executive Council be removed for 1 year. Now, Mr. Leung Kwok-hing moved other amendments. I propose 12 months, and Mr. Leung Kwok-hing in 108 reduce the pay down to 1 month. Now, because of this collective responsibility principle, EXCO members cannot speak like humans, and they have to say something in defense of the administration. Let me cite a number of examples in which Mr. W.K. Lam did make some remarks, like, for instance, UBWs of C.Y. Leung. As he is the convener of EXCO, it is not right for him to criticize severely. Now he said that that was a bit of a mistake, and he was dealing with the matter actively, and it would be difficult for him to be fair. That the Human Rights Declaration, the UN Human Rights Declaration is there, and I think we have to abide by that. Now, he is no longer the chairman of the EOC, but when he was asked about universal suffrage and remarks of Mr. Chiao Xiaoyang, Mr. Lam also made a disappointed. He said that regarding the Human Rights Commission of the UN's report regarding Hong Kong's election being in compliance with the international principle, Mr. Lam said that the International Convention is only there for reference. We have to have regard to the law and the constitution of the land. And in Hong Kong, we have to have regard to the basic law in implementing constitutional reform. Now, he was head of the EOC, and he abided by all these principles, and now he have relegated the principles to a lower position, and they're good for reference only. And the human rights and the basic law might be in conflict. Now, Mr. Leung Kwok-hing also referred to the universal retirement protection. In this regard, Mr. W.K. Lam was diametrically opposed to the Hong Kong administration. In this filibustering exercise, one of the demands is universal retirement protection. W.K. Lam said openly that the government is sitting on bountiful reserves every year. If we can spend 3% of the reserves, or if we can build up the land reserve, and the land proceeds would be sufficient to protect the lives, the livelihood of the senior citizens. He did say at EOC something like that. He was criticized as a socialist. He said that we should not be shouting alone. We should be focusing our attention. I think we are merely trying to achieve that with this filibustering. We should fight for universal retirement protection. And we have $900 billion in our reserves. If we can build up the land reserve, there would be sufficient proceeds to safeguard the interests of the senior citizens. When he said this, he was convener of the Executive Council, and it goes to show that the convener of the Executive Council, or when it comes to the collective responsibility of confidentiality, we cannot really do the same thing as the previous Executive Council. I mean, they're doing exactly the same thing as C.Y. Leung when he was convener of the Executive Council.
或者呢個行政會召集人嗰個價值、嗰個存在價值，究竟剩翻啲乜嘢呢？所以我哋就話不如就削晒佢嘅開支。咁就等你政府官員咪自己同翻梁振英，你出糧，佢出糧俾你，你同翻佢，即係同一個鼻孔出氣。咁你要制定咩政策，咪就做咯。嗱，雖然行政會議啦。
You can just speak whatever you want, and you can just toe his line. And of course, we've also got news from the grapevine. Very often, none of these would be discussed. And if C.Y. Leung doesn't propose an item at the EXCO, then EXCO will not be able to discuss anything at all. Yes, Albert Chan, Chairman. Just now, I was talking about the Declaration of Interest by Arthur Lee, and many others have also spoken on Lam Won Kwong. That's why I'd just like to add a few words before I further elaborate on my amendment, because when it comes to Lam Won Kwong, it has to do with many of the amendments in this batch of amendments. Yes, I agree and support these amendments moved by other members on cutting the pay of Lam Won Kwang as convener of the EXCO. And of course, my reasoning might be somewhat different from theirs, because I've known Lam Won Kwang for over 20 years, and while he was still a civil servant, he held different posts, and you can actually say that he was a brilliant civil servant. He was willing to listen to voices from all quarters of the community, and in dealing with government policies, and of course in executing government's decisions, he could not change government's decisions or policies, but then in dealing with issues, he would always try to take into account other people's views and demands, and in the course of implementing policy, he would also try to make sure that whatever is done would not give people the impression that the administration is actually imposing its decisions on others, and would have total disregard for other people's views. And of course, he might also meet with opposition or resistance, but then comparatively speaking, whenever he went about his business, the opposition or resistance that he met with would be a lot less than his fellow colleagues, because he's highly capable of grasping the essence of the policies of government, and therefore, as EXCO convener, in terms of government policies, his competency would be a lot higher than his fellow colleagues in EXCO, and even when compared to the chief executive, Mr. 689, I'm sure he will be a lot more capable. But then why do I still think that it's not appropriate for him to be the EXCO convener? I think probably he'll do a better job as EOC chairman than EXCO convener. And the other point is probably is a cardinal sin of him. All right, as EXCO convener, you would definitely have to have the ability to lead or influence other EXCO members' conduct or remarks. But then if you look at the situation, and if you look back on history, back in the British colonial era, well, you might have forgotten about the political structure back then. Well, all these all these institutions today are basically the legacy of the colonial era. All right, we've been told that there would be 50 years unchanged. That's promised by the basic law. But then if you look at the institutions that we have, the structure, the organizational structure, the operation, and so on, basically they have inherited everything from the British colonial era. Shortly before the reunification, well, the Executive Council that we were so used to, well, the EXCO convener, in dealing with government policies, all right, the convener would definitely have the power or ability to lead, and he or she must be very influential. I could still recall back then, of course, we used to have the Legislative Council, which had a different Chinese name, and of course we also have the OMELCO, the Office of the Executive Council and the Legislative Council, and the convener of both councils were able to take the lead in dealing with major issues affecting the community. And of course, back then, the most important issue was the negotiation between the PRC and the British government on the future of Hong Kong. And during those days, EXCO members and lawmakers were very concerned about this, and the conveners were able to represent the community and the two councils in fighting for the interests of the people of Hong Kong. Yet, I think this impression is diminishing and vanishing. It's not just that they are not doing this at all, but then we have also witnessed that the EXCO convener has been performing in such a manner during the greedy Zhang era. And of course, the convener was actually not performing at all because he was actually at odds or at loggerheads with the then chief executive Donald Zhang, and they were actually living in different worlds. And in the day-to-day operation, Donald Zhang just viewed Sau-lan as non-existent, and Sau-lan would also try to establish relations with the liaison office in Hong Kong, and there was no intention whatsoever on either's mind to work for another. All right. Well, we could often see Sau-lan trying to get some advantage out of his position as EXCO convener, and sitting on EXCO, he was also able to get hold of some information, and he was practically doing things that would benefit himself. So the EXCO convener's role was reduced to somebody who has no importance at all. And then by the time when W.K. Lam became the EXCO convener, why do I say that this position or whoever is taking up this position has committed an original or a cardinal sin? That's because there are 4 components in the EXCO: pro-Beijing, and government officials, and also professionals, and also some from the business sector. So basically, these are the 4 sectors where people would be drawn out from, and that's very much the situation tracing back to the C.H. Tung era. But then if you look at the actual role of the EXCO convener, he's really not a leader, or not the leader of EXCO. All right, for Beijing's liaison office in Hong Kong, and also for those who are pro-liaison office, well, they would be hurt more. When would W.K. Lam be hurt? And also, they also have their own system, and therefore they might be more familiar with themselves, and therefore they have better communication. But then for Sau-lan's fans, they had no working relationship whatsoever with W.K. Lam, and they would not be influenced by W.K. Lam. And as far as the business sector is concerned, W.K. Lam's influence would be somewhat weaker, because for the tycoons and the spokespersons, why would they be bothered by W.K. Lam's remarks? That's why in actual operation, he simply does not have the ability to lead or to take the lead in the EXCO, let alone the entire government. It's not possible for him to influence the government at all. You ask, somebody whom I described as political bouncers, Chen Chi-kong, if you ask Lam Wun-kwong to tell him that, well, please do not be so biased in your columns, and your stance should not be so radical, and when it comes to your stance on national education, you should not confront the public. All right, he'll just neglect you. He'll just turn away, because he has his political duties. And as EXCO's convener, when you have already lost your role as an EXCO convener in the actual operation of the system, then of course this is not something he subjectively would like to see. That has to do with the setup of the EXCO. If you look back on the past, well, during the British Hong Kong colonial era, the Executive Council and its convener enjoy a special status in a community and in a setup, and very often for the convener of EXCO, he would also be nominating some candidates to the administration, so that the administration can appoint these people whom he are most familiar with, and he can also work with them. And as a result, the influence of the convener of EXCO would be a lot higher, because if he's able to make sure that some of the key positions are filled by his affiliates, then of course his influence would be a lot higher and stronger. So this is an inherent problem of the system. The incumbent EXCO convener is very much detached or isolated from the rest of EXCO, and he doesn't share the same vision with his fellow colleagues in EXCO. That's why taking up the role of EXCO convener would not be able to do much. Actually, this convener's post only exists in name. If you look at the actual operation of the system now, the so-called EXCO convener is not really able to play the coordinator's role or work with his fellow colleagues. Well, this role has been diminished to such an extent that it's almost vanished. I've never seen W.K. Lam as EXCO convener meeting the media together with his fellow EXCO colleagues or making any joint statement at all. We have never seen that happen. And if you look back, well, this happened very often in the past, but then during this term of government, under the leadership of 689, the overall operation of EXCO has been a fiasco. It's very much a very loose organization. It's very rarely seen, and I do have a cough, and therefore can you have a head count so that I can take a break?
陳偉議員。
多主席，就即係頭先提到。
Mr. Albert Chan, thank you, Chairman. Just now I was referring to Lam Won Kwong, and to a certain extent, I think by taking up this post is a waste of his talent and his capability as a commander or general. I think it's really regrettable that he has not been able to fully develop his skills and talent. That's why I describe this as a cardinal sin, and that's the reason why I support that the post be scrapped or certain allocation or provision be cut. And I was let me come back to Arthur Lee. Why I rank him number 6, whose pay or remuneration should be cut. Other than the fact that he's almost invisible, there are also 2 other problems why he should be ranked so high on the list. First, he is taking up many duties, not public duties or public office. In terms of his private interests, there are simply too many. If you look at the registrable interests registered by him, and of course when compared to Bernard Chen, is quite a far cry, and in dealing with Bernard Chen, I'll be explaining further. But then for Arthur Lee, if you look at his personal interests and also his involvement in companies and so on, he has substantial involvement, including Bank of East Asia Limited, and also executive director and so on. All right, this is his family business, and Shangri-La Asia Limited, he's an independent non-executive director. Another one is a major corporation, that's the Wharf Holdings Limited, and for Wharf Limited is one of the top 5 property developers, and of course its business is not confined to property development. And fourthly is China Flooring Holding Company Limited, and then Heng Wai Investment Company Limited, Nam Wo Hong Limited. Another one is Wu Fat Sing Limited, and then FN Holdings Berhad.
This is from Australia. And another one, an Australian company, Biodium Limited. Then of course there is another one, very well known to the public, that is DBC. The DBC Holdings, holding the radio station. From what I understand,
令到呢一個電台
he was the one supporting the reorganization of DBC so that the radio broadcast came to an end. Of course, that was a political mission that he had to discharge. But what he did caused the radio broadcasts to stop for a certain time. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Leung Kwok-hing? Chairman. Many people have talked about Lam Won Kwong and that he seemed to have become a different person once he joined EXCO. According to the basic law, he should advise the CE because the EXCO is an organ for assisting the CE in policy making. This is a constitutional arrangement. I heard Mr. Albert Chan talk about the declaration of interests. I find it rather strange. Actually, there was once when in this council I asked a question, and the BVI company of the CE, and I asked the question here, what has become of that company? And the CE said in this council that he said, would not deal in business from Hong Kong, but he has not even found a trustee. Has he got a trustee for his interests in that company? He should be here to answer my question. He has not answered my question so far. The convener of EXCO, as a head of the advisors team, will listen to the emperor, but the emperor is not setting a good example. The BVI company issue has bothered the public for a long time. The EXCO is not forming a rule whereby that such interest should not be possessed, and if someone possesses the interest, the business situation of the company should be revealed. If the CE doesn't do it, then of course his advisors won't do it. And that goes to show that the system is very problematic. Just now, Mr. Albert Chan was talking about a general and his staff, but I think he should have summed up his view by one statement. Now, when the political reform was carried, Mr. Lam Wun Kwong said that a good bird will find a good tree to rest in. The EXCO is likened to a tree. And if you are a good bird, you want to rest in this tree, but if this tree is rotten, or if other birds are not as good, then there may be avian flu. Right, I'll leave Lam Wun Kwong. I will talk about Chang Yu-tong now, who has been on the EXCO for 3 terms. Well, there is this saying that what comes last may not be the most important, but never mind. According to the basic law, at EXCO, they should be people to assist the CE in policy making. If we look at this from the perspective of universal retirement protection, then Mr. Chang has not done his utmost, or that he is incompetent. I dare not speculate which one of this is true, because what he would have said at EXCO should be kept confidential, but it's clear that we are not achieving any results. Mr. Chang Yu-tong is not the same as Mr. Tam Yu-chung. Mr. Chang Yu-tong never wore 2 hats. He has always been a veteran of FTU, but Mr. Tam Yu-chung has now switched over to DAB. I will not go into that because I want to concentrate on labor issues. Mr. Chang has been on EXCO for 3 terms. All 3 CEs have regarded his presence as valuable in reflecting the views of the labor sector. That must be the case because he doesn't have any other capacity. Okay, let us take a look. Let us first put aside the collective bargaining matter. That has been the case for 15 years and we still have not seen it revived. I would not repeat what I have said. I would just summarize it in 1 line. And that is, Mr. Tam Yu-chung proposed a program, but it was not or has not been implemented, whether it be 2 tiers or... Sorry, Mr. Leung Kwok-hing, you are speaking for the 5th time. What other members and what you yourself have said should not be repeated. Well, if members had not been here 2 days ago, they would not have known what I said. Never mind, just 1 line. The FTU was negotiating with Chris Patton that there should be a 2-tier system, 1 OH pension and the other 1 MPF. Or a voluntary provident fund, but then we had neither. We only had the MPF, and the FTU called the MPF a rotten orange. I am not making this up. FTU members said in LegCo that they reluctantly accepted the MPF, but they would still call it a rotten orange. And of course, they would not offer the rotten orange to workers, but they said that a rotten orange is better than having no orange at all, so swallow that rotten orange. I think the orange has been so rotten that it has become marmalade for use as a spread for toasts. This is a Federation of Trade Unions with a big membership, and there are many members representing it here in LegCo. There is this person from FTU at IXCO, but he has been there for 3 terms, and yet he has not achieved anything. And by that I mean turning a rotten orange into a fresh orange. Don't you call it negligence of duty? This is not just any other form of negligence of duty, because amongst IXCO members, well, I have done a checking. Amongst the public figures, those who have Mr. Kwok-hing, I think you are repeating what Mr. Albert Chan already covered. Did he say this? Did he talk about Zhang Yutong? Please do not repeat what he said. Okay. What did he say? Is it that he did not perform on par? What other members have said should be for you to know. It is your responsibility. So I would actually advise you not to leave the chamber when other members speak. Well, I was watching the broadcast upstairs, but I don't think he was as detailed as I am. Mr. Albert Chan actually spent more than 15 minutes on this. What you just said had been covered by him. Did he talk about a rotten orange? Well, anyway, if you are saying things that, in my view, is a repetition, I will not allow it. I am actually citing from history, but never mind. If you don't allow me to go into history, I will do something else. I will listen to you. As far as I remember, if we could go back on the tape, I think Albert Chan did not say that the Mr. Zhang Yutong had been on 3 terms of EXCO. Well, it's all right. If you say we should not, or Mr. Zhang Yutong is not worth mentioning, then so be it. Let me talk about the universal retirement protection issue. Mr. Zhang Yutong did not do enough to strive for its introduction, and I have just said that he is the only one wearing the hat of a labor representative at EXCO. Let us look at it from another perspective. On this issue of universal retirement protection, which amendment are you speaking to? The reduction of a month's salary. Which one, please? Can you cite it for us? 84. 84. Yes. This is proposed by Mr. Raymond Chan, Head 21 CE's office, to reduce the amount under Head 21, subhead 000 by $808,680. If that's the case, what does it have to do with universal retirement protection? If a person has been appointed to EXCO, so he can represent the views of the labor sector, but if he has not been successful with anything all these years, then he might have already committed a mistake, even if it is not a big one. I think that viewpoint has been covered in detail by Mr. Albert Chan. Please do not repeat it. Okay, then I should talk about someone else. I should not talk about the BVI companies anymore. Chairman, I was talking about the declaration of interest. No one has reformed it. The CE took the lead to destroy or cause harm to the system. He was reluctant to reveal the details, even at LegCo here, which should monitor his performance. If that's the case, how can he lead his team? Actually, it is not that no one made any recommendation. Are you still on amendment number 84? Yes. Please continue. Please continue. Yes. May I quote an example? Franklin Lam. You might say I have already covered him, so I will not say more about him. Let me comment on someone who has joined many public organizations. Anna Wu. Do they have the responsibility to propose to the CE a much improved declaration system so that the organizations having public power that they take part in should have more authority. I think they are very experienced in this. Let me cite you an example. The BVI company. Certainly, many people in the business sector would set up companies in the BVI to avoid paying tax or monitoring. But if you are an EXCO member, I would say that they should abide by higher moral standards. What businessmen use to avoid paying tax or to cover up their secretive business dealings should be regulated. And if anyone should have set up a company in BVI, then they should not be an EXCO member. Did anyone mention that before? I can't see how what you are saying can be related to Amendment number 84. This is because people who have commented on this, like Ms. Anna Wu, still I cannot see such a system applying to EXCO. And if I should go for dialectics, I'm trying to say that the CE is not doing it. Now, I don't know what has transpired at EXCO because there is confidentiality. Number 2, you remember when we had the POAS, you were an EXCO councillor at that time, and someone already said that if you were an official member, official members dare not say anything about the non-official members. If you were an official member and if you should hold beneficial interest in shareholdings of a nominal value greater than 1% of the issued share capital, then you should declare it. And come today. In fact, I was talking about 2002 just now, remember. Sorry, Mr. Leung Kwok-hing, I still cannot see how what you are saying can be related to Amendment number 84. Because you're already speaking for the 5th time. Please do not digress from the issue under discussion, please. Now I'm talking about Ms. Anna Wu. I am trying to reduce the salary of Ms. Anna Wu. Do you know her personally? She is famous for monitoring the workings of government. She was the chairman of the EOC, and she was commenting on the ex-judge, Mr. Wong Kin-chow. Remember, before she was an EXCO councillor, she was very forthcoming in criticizing the wrongdoings of government. But after she has become the EXCO councillor, she has become quite reticent. So I'm trying to reduce her salary, and I'm quoting an example that she proposed, but then she did not bring it to fruition at EXCO. I'm not being unfair to her. This is about declaring beneficial interest in shareholding of a nominal value greater than 1% of the issued share capital. She has done that for 10 years, and actually she has not achieved anything after having been on EXCO for 10 years. Shouldn't we penalize her by taking away 1 month's remuneration from her? Why shouldn't we do it? I know that the CE is reluctant to do it, but this should be proposed. One more thing. When the POAS was introduced, there was a proposal that all directorships should be resigned from so as to reassure the public. But nobody did it. I would be ashamed, and it would take up too much time if I were to read out the whole list of directorships. Even grassroots understand this, and grassroots people were telling me that I should do something about it. So I'm saying a person of integrity, a person of high moral standing, if he or she is at EXCO and he or she doesn't stand by those standards anymore, then the salaries should be reduced. This is my theory. It is very simple. And that is, before joining EXCO, if a person is excellent but he or she is not going to perform anymore after joining EXCO, then the salary should be reduced. This is very easy dialectics. The meeting will be adjourned here and will be resumed at 9 o'clock on the 29th of April.